We're looking out the window of my wormery and it's still early September, and I guess earlier today it was sweltering hot and steamy, humid weather, and now we've got chunks of hail dropping down, and the temperature probably fell about 10 degrees over the past 5 minutes. So I don't know, I'm going to try filming a video, but if I need to suddenly stop filming, it might be because I've got to run over and shut the window. I just thought it was interesting to see these huge chunks of hail dropping down out of the sky into my lawn. And yeah, I know, I gotta cut the grass. Alright, let's get on to checking my worm bins. So the bins that we have out here on the bench are the ones we're going to be working on, and oddly enough, I was going to grab my little green information board here to write down some data about these two systems, and it turns out that 15 days ago, when we last checked in on these systems, was the last time I even used this green board. So I can't believe I've gone over 2 weeks without using this green board, but basically it's the same story here. We actually, during the last check-in 15 days ago, initiated the process of foraging in these systems, and all we got to do is add 15 days to the age of these bins. So the older of the two bins, this one right here, is 319 days of age, and the younger bin over here, the one that's got the compostable bag in it, is 295 days of age. I don't know, I'm kind of writing crooked over here. And whatever, the last time we checked in we fed, and it was the last feeding, which was feeding number 30 and feeding number 25. So I think those are the only bits of data that require updating over here. And just to recap, I did watch the video briefly before coming down here just to refresh my memory. We anticipated that there'd be a couple things that might be left over here in the older of the two bins. We anticipated that we'd probably find leftovers of the pumpkin stem that you might have saw a reference to on the green board. And over here, an item that's been undergoing testing now for some time is the compostable bag. And I guess, yeah, the age of the compostable bag is also something that was documented over on the information board too, right? So if we add 15 days to 162, 177 is now the age of the compostable bag over here in the younger of the two systems. So we thought we might bump into a little bit of leftover banana peel, and that's what we see right there, and the compostable bag. We took a little different approach to the compostable bag last time by simply including it with the top covering bits of newspaper that were resting out on top. But in order to try to promote the breakdown of the top covering newspaper bits that were in here, we covered them with worm chow and coffee, and I don't see any sign whatsoever of the top covering newspaper that was out here. Covered with worm chow and coffee, so after 14 days, kind of makes sense, right? Surprisingly though, there's still pretty good amounts of this leftover potato peel, which we bumped into last time. That actually goes back 15 days now, and I think that the board showed that the previous feeding had been 12 days. So those potato peels are now, you know, pretty old, taking some time to break down. You know, when I'm letting systems forage, my only interest is to see leftover bits of bedding material and scraps of leftover food. Here's the stem of the banana that we found last time. And you know, I think we even talked about how the next check-in on this system might be us just simply scooping all this stuff out, running it through my screen, and then using that screening approach to basically separate the worms from their castings. Doing so with the knowledge that what passes through the screen is not going to just be castings. We're probably going to end up seeing a whole bunch of little itsy bitsy baby worms pass through the screen, probably some worm cocoons. So we kind of went into that with the assumption that we would screen and end up with a whole bunch of worms that we can relocate into a new home. But then we would also need to initiate some sort of approach to gathering up the straggler little itsy bitsy worms that fell through the screen into the castings. And we did hint at, during the last video, we did hint at the next check-in on these systems being the point in time when we would actually do that screening of the material and separation of the worms from their castings, but I'm not prepared to go down that road today. I would normally want to have, some prepared bedding sitting around, possibly even some prepared bins into which we could simply drop worms that are in the process of being relocated. And since I'm not prepared to make that happen today, I just figured we would use this as a quick check-in on the systems, perhaps stir up the material, see how the material's doing as far as foraging goes. I mean, I could still see, obviously, potato peel in various locations. Obviously, pumpkin stem and a little bit of banana peel too, so there's still some work to be done in here if we were to let the foraging continue, which we will, clearly, since I'm not migrating worms today. But I also figured maybe we can give the system a little bit of a stir and move the material around a little bit. See how the worms are looking. They seem pretty content in here. There's a good number of them. I think last time too I commented on how the material is so nice and flaky and crumbly, and that might lead some viewers to believe that the material is overly dry, which it is definitely not. It's definitely got a good amount of moisture content to it. In fact, in a couple spots it even seemed like it might be clumping together a little bit more than I would like. So that's a little bit unusual. Usually when I feel material that's got a good moisture content to it, it's kind of clumpy and muddy, but here it's got nice moisture content, but it continues to flow really nicely. So I'm really liking the appearance of this material here. I wasn't quite sure if we fully stirred all the material closest to me around yet, so I figured I'd just bounce back over here into the younger bin and make sure everything's been stirred around nicely. And yeah, there's a little bit of noise coming from the street outside and the traffic passing by. Maybe you can hear rain falling. Maybe you can even hear hail falling. But I figured I would take advantage of the nice cool air outside to cool down my wormery. Because upstairs, when I left the upstairs, I still had the air conditioner running. So when I run upstairs, I'll probably just shut the AC off because it's not needed anymore. And this nice cool temperature that's rolling in, just amazing how it could be hot and sweltery 1 minute, and then a little weather front rolls in, brings the cool air with it, and causes all the moisture in the air to just condense and drop out of the air. And I guess that's where those summer showers come from. There is a good bit of breeze. It's even kind of pushing little bits of raindrops all the way in and hitting me on the shoulder. I'm surprised. That's okay, I don't mind. It feels good. It's actually a little bit refreshing. But we're not going to spend a whole lot more time in here. No feeding today. Just allow the worms to continue on with the breakdown of the residual scraps of material that's down in the bin. It was kind of nice to see how they consumed all the newspaper that was spread out across the top. Not too surprising since it had been treated with a whole bunch of worm chow and a whole bunch of coffee sprinkled over the top of it. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I guess it's a fair outcome to expect to see, is that the newspaper just gets gobbled up when it's been coated with all kinds of yummy bite-sized morsels for the worms to eat. And we're just going to come back on with the plastic covers when we're done here, stirring the material around and checking out how everything looks. Here and there the material even does feel almost a little bit muddy, you know. When the material begins to stick to my gloves, that to me is sometimes an indication that the material might be getting just a little bit more damp than I want it to be. But as long as it continues to crumble the way it does here, I'm not concerned. I'm okay with it. And over where we found that kind of somewhat overly damp and a little bit sticky material, wasn't surprising to find a whole bunch of worms hanging out there enjoying that moisture. So I think this was probably a good idea too, which was to sort of kind of just blend the material around so that any bits of the material that are still a little bit more damp down low can sort of be blended in with the materials elsewhere in the bin that are not quite as damp, and sort of equalize moisture content throughout the bin. But I think we're pretty much done here. I don't really have anything more to do here other than just inspect and verify that everything's doing okay, and it does seem to me like everything's doing okay. I do need to make a little note for myself, a little to-do item, to prepare some material into which we can relocate these little guys at some point in the near future when we decide to finally come in here with my sifter and screen all this material through really quick and separate as many worms as we can and launch off a couple new systems with these little guys, get them working on some nice new material. And then we'll also need to just initiate some sort of abating for whatever worms fall through the screen and need to be rounded up after the fact. So I've got a few things I need to make sure I don't take any worms with me to the sink when I go get myself cleaned up. I saw at least one little baby worm on my glove. Luckily that was the only one. So yeah, like I was saying, there's not much more for me to do around here other than just get stuff cleaned up and put away, but that's boring. I'm not going to waste your time with that. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.